All right. Hello, everyone. There's already a lot of energy popping in. I'm getting text messages from different people, and it feels good to be here with you. I'm also working with a new technology where I'm actually going live through Zoom as opposed to Be Live TV. There are all these different ways where I'm being asked to, by asked, I mean within myself, being asked to come more out into the world to reveal the internal processes that go on within me that allow me to uh, liberate myself from the places where I've felt imprisoned. And the places where I have most felt imprisoned, as I imagine many of us can relate with, is the prison that I create inside my own mind. The conditionings that exist outside of me, which have created uh, a feeling of being trapped by the stories of who I'm allowed to be or who I'm not allowed to be, what I'm allowed to do or what I'm not allowed to do, what I'm allowed to believe or what I'm not allowed to believe. And so much of this revolving around what is right and what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is evil, and what is pure. And so often, so these are polarities. Polarities are when something is polarizing, it means that there are two things, at least two things that are existing that directly contrast each other, that don't seem like they should be able to exist at the same time. Like an example of this might be that, well, like a great one, and a great example here is the distinction between masculine and feminine integrity, if these are terms that you're familiar with. So, masculine integrity, for example, is, well, I made the commitment that I was going to show up on this day at this time and be of service to this person in this way. I made the agreement, I'm going to do it. Feminine integrity, which is equally as true and necessary and valid, is, well, yes, I understand that I made this commitment to be here at this day, at this time, to be of service to this person, but something happened in the interim where, I had this conversation with this person and it didn't feel right in my system. It didn't land right in my body. It doesn't feel good. And to follow through with this agreement that I made would actually be going against what I feel in my heart. So there are two contrasting opinions that many would argue, well, they can't both exist. They can't both be right because they contradict each other. But I tell you, my friend, our ability to hold polarity, our ability to hold contrasting opinions simultaneously without needing to squash one in order for the other to exist, is one of the most important skills and practices that we can hold and cultivate if we want to experience liberation from suffering, liberation from feeling like it's not okay to be all of who I am and that I need to hide who I am in order to operate in this world. To me, one of the most interesting places to work, however, is not in the polarity between two different people, even though that's highly applicable right now. I'm doing a live interview with a couple of amazing women this coming Monday, which I'll post a link to in the comments below, about the relationship between evil and eros. And we are amidst a global pandemic right now, and there are a lot along with the fact that there actually is a global pandemic going on where I don't know the exact numbers because there's a lot of false information out there, but a lot of people are dying, and simultaneously there's a lot of corrupt political agendas and just deeper agendas that are being mixed in with this global pandemic that uh, is very controversial, and it makes sense why we would be angry and outraged that we see injustice and evil existing outside of us. And from that place, there can be a lot of finger pointing. That person's wrong. That person's evil. They fuck them. They're a bad human being. And there's this way that in the finger pointing and the righteous indignation, there's a way that we want to dissociate from the fact that on some level, this energy, this badness, this wrongness simultaneously exists within us on some level. That doesn't mean that we're a murderer. That doesn't mean that we're pushing corrupt political agendas, but that there is something that exists within us that in some ways enjoy causing harm, enjoy having power over, enjoy manipulating, enjoy dominating, enjoy controlling. Now, right off the bat, you might think, well, that's not true. I don't enjoy any of those things. But often it's those impulses that exist deeper down within us that, because they are so confronting to us, that we don't want to act like they exist within us, that we don't actually see them for what they are. So this is more of a conversation I'll be getting into in the Conscious Connections chat Facebook group on Monday, in the conversation on the relationship between evil and eros. However, what I want to speak about more specifically in this conversation is what it means when something is polarizing, and really looking at when polarity exists within us, when there's something polarizing that exists within us, when there are two truths that simultaneously exist that so directly confront each other that in a way it's kind of like system meltdown. Like, how do I be with both of these things at the same time and allow for both of them to be true? If the alternative means that I need to make an aspect of myself wrong, I need to disown an aspect of myself, which is where the majority of suffering, the majority of harm actually occurs, when we disown an aspect of the self, and then it winds up coming out in wonky ways that are in the shadows and are our blind spots because we refuse to acknowledge that they're an aspect of us. So, a wonderful example of something that can be polarizing within us is to work in the realms of our eroticism, our sexuality, our erotic desire. And especially for those who consider themselves on any type of spiritual path or just want to be considered a good person in the world, is the desire to be, an enlightened spiritual being, a good human, and then the part of us that might have sexual desires rooted in, maybe I do have a desire to be controlled. Maybe I do have a desire to be dominated. Maybe I have rape fantasies. Maybe there is this whole spectrum of my relationship to desire. And for those who aren't already aware, desire and our relationship to desire is one of the key cruxes of all of my private coaching work, the groups that I facilitate, because the relationship between desire and fear, that which we deeply desire at a soul level, is simultaneously often that which we deeply fear, because to lean into that desire and make ourselves available to it would mean that in a way there's an annihilation of identity of the person that we previously were, in order to open up to this new person who could have this desire. I digress. So when something is polarizing, it's this feeling of, well, I identify with this pole. I identify with the pole of it is important to value equality between men and women. I am a stand for gender equality. I am a stand for the mutual honoring and acknowledging of all human beings as equal, worthy of respect, worthy of love. And then simultaneously, there is deep fantasy in me and an erotic level of, I want a man to dominate me, that I have rape fantasy desires, that there are these aspects of my desire that feel so wrong, so not okay. And it's this question of, how do we reconcile that both of these poles exist, both of these polar opposites exist, and that they're actually right, and they all are both right and true, and that they both can actually exist at the same time. Because often what will happen is, after we cultivate some approval for the kind of the darker emotion, we'll have approval for it, but only one can be there at the time at a time. It's like, well, I'm in my light and my pure body now, and now I'm in my darkness and my take me, and now I'm back in my light and my purity and my desire for equality for all, and now I'm in the take me, fuck me, use me in whatever way you desire. So the unification of polarity which is also shadow integration. It's the great work, as alchemical philosophers would call it. Uh, the unification of polarity is the willingness to have in the light of day both sides of the pole, both polarizing opposites, and find a way that they can actually come into direct relationship, dance, unification with each other in service to something greater than what they could have been separately. A great visual example of this is for those of us who have seen the Dark Crystal, the old original Dark Crystal, and that final moment at the end of the movie where we've been shown that there are the mystics, the beings of light, and then there are the Skeksis, and there are these dark, like twisted beings who feed on the essence of like the young and the pure. And the ultimate, scene in this movie is when the mystics travel to the Skeksis, and the dark and the light comes together and unifies into supreme beings that are not either light or dark, but they are unified and they are both, and they are God. It is the I am presence. So polarization is any time when we experience reactivity around polarity or something that has us want to contract or make the opposite polarity wrong. It's like, well, right now I'm relating with this. So this thing existing is threatening the rightness of what I believe. So I need to make that wrong in some way to justify my rightness. So there's this powerful shift that can occur when we let go of our attachment to our perspective being right as a means towards creating safety, and instead realizing that our ability to have power and influence and freedom in our life is directly related to our capacity to hold multiple simultaneous, potentially conflicting truths simultaneously, and learn how to be in the intense sensation and charge of holding these directly confronting truths, which cultivates an immense amount of energy in the body, erotic energy, life force energy, which, if we cultivate our attention and our intention, can be directly channeled into creating things, creating new things, more aligned with our unified, integrated self, if you know what I mean. All right, that feels good. Curious to hear your thoughts on this topic around polarization, perhaps sharing where you're experiencing some polarizing, either within yourself or in your relationships, and what it might feel like to shift from a more reactionary way of relating to it to a more curiosity-based exploration of how can both of these things be true, and how can I actually find freedom in this? To be continued. Much love.